everyone, it's Desiree, and it is time for the Scrapping for Less Flavor of the Month Kit Reveal. I know, you were all waiting, yay. Don't you love this bag? Doesn't it just makes you want spring to come in because I'm still waiting for it? How about y'all? Anyway, so let's dig and see what's inside for the April 2018 kit. And the theme for this kit is called The Colors of Spring. So, of course, you get your paper. And it's now the My Favorite Things paper. And you get 2 Nina Solar 110 pound. And the colors that you're getting for our cardstock is Grout Gray, Snow Cone, Insulation Pink, Grape Jelly, Natural, and Jelly Bean Green. Of course, we'll have links for our sketches, which I'll be using. And then, of course, you get your ingredient sheet, which, of course, tells you what's in each of the collections. And that is what I love about this card kit. I just think it is awesome. The way that they put these together, you know, whether you're a card maker, a scrapbooker, or whatever, all of these kits are really great. So, sorry for the pause here. Obviously, I'm trying to put something together and I'm looking for something. So let's look at collection 1. Now remember, I get the full kit up to the banana split. So, but for those of you that go with the double dip sundae, you're getting everything that you're seeing here so far. So for collection 1, you get a stamp set from Pink and Maine called Raining Frogs. You get a couple doilies. You get a beautiful sequin collection. You get some Desiree mini clips, and the doilies are from Desiree. And then you get a paper pad. You get 6 by 6, say that 10 times fast, of a paper collection, and this is Spring Market by Echo Park. For our second collection, which of course I'm opening off to the side there, and of course each of the ingredient collections comes with an envelope as well. So this set, number 2, comes with a stamp called Spring Greetings by Sunny Studios, a beautiful pastel sequins, some wonderful wooden dies of butterflies and some leaves or flowers. You also get a sticker sheet of words, and then of course your 6 by 6 paper, pattern papers, Perfectly Plaid Spring by Lawn Fawn. Can't have enough of those. For our third collection, again, your envelope and all the wonderful goodies that in here. The stamp is from Stamping Bella, Tiny Towny Daffodil Girl. You get your sequin pack. You get some craft twine. Isn't that a beautiful stamp? I thought she was just so cute. I'm really liking Stamping Bella. You get 3 colors of foil dotted cardstock that can be used as card panels. You can cut them up to make shapes. And then you get bundles of blossoms by My Favorite Things. In our fourth collection, you can see it's jammed packed, and my favorite is the fourth. You get some washi tape, a full row. These sequins are really pretty. They're little flowers, so there's a lot of dimension with them, which I think is awesome. I love the house mouse. I think they are just so cute from Stampendous, and that one's called the Crocus Droplet. You get some stickers by Doodlebug that state thinking of you, your envelope, and your paper pack is Vintage Bliss by Simple Stories, and they are double-sided, as you can see. So that's what you get with the double dip sundae, if that's what you subscribe to or thinking about subscribing. Now, if you are thinking about the banana split or already subscribing to the banana split, these are the items that you'll get to that level. So these are the extra items. So again, everything you saw prior is what you get with your first subscription there. So here you get some watercolor panels by Concord and Ninth. You actually get, I thought this was awesome, in celery green, a watercolor by Avery L. You get your sucker. Gotta have your sucker. You get a really cute die called Spring Sprig by Lawn Fawn. And look at that stamp set. I am absolutely in love with that stamp set. And it has one of my favorite sentiments on it. Bloom where you are planted. The stamp set was called Spring Bloom by Scrapping for Less and Brutus Monroe. So yay! So let's get into card 1. So for this one I'm using collection 1 and sketch 3. So I took a card base, or not a card base, but a piece of cardstock from my stash, and I cut that to 3 3¾ by 5 inches. And then I took a couple of the pattern papers, if you hear the motorcycle going by, so sorry, and I just cut them to be the same width. I cut them on a diagonal, and then I adhered them on top of that base. And then I'm just going to trim off the sides. From another piece of scrap paper, I cut out a circle, and I'm going to adhere one of the doilies on top of it. Again, with these kits, you can have so many different textures on your cards, or whatever you create with paper. Don't limit yourself. So I have that adhered, and that's going to sit right across the diagonal. The sentiment, to enjoy the rainbow, we must endure the rain. How true. So I stamped that with my VersaFine ink, and I used my clear embossing powder on top of that. So we're going to set those pieces aside. And from the stamp set, I chose the boots. The frog's adorable. But I just chose the boots, and I'm using Canson XL watercolor paper here. And once I stamp that with my VersaFine ink, I'm going to use my clear embossing powder, and we're going to heat set that. I'm going to be using my Zig real brush markers on this. So I'm not going to show all of the coloring only because of the time of this video, so sit back, this is a long one. So I'll show some of it. So I always just put a little bit of the color down, and then I use my water brush or aqua brush, whatever you want to call it, and move the pigment around. You can just use the colors from the markers themselves. You don't have to add water to them. I did fussy cut that out, and that's going to sit. So now I'm just playing with my placement. I also cut a strip from another of the pattern papers in the collection, and I cut that to be 1 inch wide. Wasn't quite sure how long I wanted it to be, and then I fishtailed it. And of course, here's my vintage photo distress ink, because I have to distress around everything. It seems to be a theme with me lately in all my videos, just to give it some dimension, some shadow. So I distressed everything. So now we're just going to continue to play with those placements. So I'm propping my circle up with some foam squares, and I'm going to set that down, and we're going to trim off the edge. I do want it to be cut off on that edge. I'm going to take my sentiment and glue that straight down to the center of the circle, and that I'm going to let hang off the edge. And then I'm going to prop up the boots with some foam squares off to the edge where that sentiment is. The die that I used to cut out my sentiment is from my stash, and it's actually a Desiree die set. So now I'm just going to curve up my fishtails, because I always do that. Whenever I fishtail pattern paper or anything, I always got to curve it up. Again, it's all about the dimension, the texture. I'm going to use some foam squares, and I'm going to set that down and just make sure that it goes in behind where my sentiment and the rain boots are sitting. And then I'll trim off the top of that and just hit that with a little bit of vintage photo as well, just to make sure that's distressed. I'm going to glue this panel directly down onto my 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 top folding card base. And that's what our card looks like so far. I'm going to pull in my sparkle pen from Nuvo and put that onto the rain boots. And then I'm going to pull in, I want to try, this is the first time I'm trying this, my Nouveau Glaze. So it's like glossy accents. So use that if you have it. It is a lot thinner, the consistency, if anybody was wondering, than the glossy accents. Not quite sure about it yet, but still playing around with it. So I put that on top and the sparkle will stay underneath of it. And then from the kit, the collection kit, you also have these cute little clothespins. So I figured I'm just going to put that right on top. And that's our first card. So for card number 2, I'm using the second collection, of course, and I'm using the sketch number 2. So I pulled out some acrylic paints, and I'm one to put my fingers right into acrylic paint. So, yep, we're going to get a little bit, can't say inky, so let's call it painty, maybe. And I want to use these colors to give color to these wooden dies. So, of course, I used a pale green for the leaf, and I'm using a rose color for the flower. And again, I'm just using my finger to put the colors, and then a teal, a purple, and a periwinkle blue. And I'm going to color the butterflies. So I'm actually going to blend, and just by using my finger and a little bit of that green, I'm actually able to blend the colors onto these wooden pieces. So we're just going to go through, and I just put a color in the center, and then I come in with the next color while it's still wet. It's almost like what we do with our ink pads on our stamps when we want to blend some colors together. I'm doing the same thing except with my finger and acrylic paint. And that's what they look like. I think they're really sharp. So I grabbed a circle die because I wanted to have a circle that's going to go back on this. And wait till you see this, guys. This card is proof I do not give up on a card. So I used one of my dies from my stash from Penny Black, the vintage frames, and I just trimmed the sides of this panel. I did use a circle die as well. As you can tell, I'm throwing things across the table there as I'm distressing it, yes, with my vintage photo. And you can see this circle is just a little bit bigger because I want that to sit in the back. And when I'm distressing this, I'm actually not just going over the edge. I'm going over the top as well. So I want that distress to be the background. I'm going to prop this panel up with some double-sided foam tape. And you can see I have it coming off the edge, and I'm just going to trim that. Does anybody see what I forgot to do? Well, yeah, I didn't notice that until I kept on trimming this. So the white piece on the right-hand side needs to go underneath that circle. I'm still trimming, and this is when I realize it and go, oh my. So here we go. We actually rip this off very gingerly. Yes, it did pull away from the card base, but that's okay. I was able to pull off the section of it and get that white panel below. I do have a crease in my panel. That's okay. It can be hidden. No one is going to notice that. But I refuse to give up on this. So I grabbed the wooden die pieces, and now I'm going to glue them. So I wanted the leaf to be inside the circle, and I wanted the flower up on top of that, but hanging outside of it. And then I'm going to place my butterflies coming up off of that as well, both on the cutout and inside the circle. So that's what we have. I pulled in some of my Nouveau drops. This is Dandelion Yellow, just to put the center of the flower. Didn't have to have a backing on it. I went right down onto that white circle. I'm using one of the phrases, enjoy the moment. How fitting is this? Enjoy the moment with what I just did. I distressed around it, and I'm going to use that for my sentiment. And there's so many here. Now again, remember, some of the items that I'm showing may change than what you receive. That's kind of the beauty of this as well. You get to have little surprises. Even though we sometimes like to know what we're getting. But these are pleasant surprises. I used my black glaze gel pen, a lot of things here that are tongue twisters, for the centers of the butterfly to make them stand out. I'm using my glossy accents to go over the flower to make that shiny, and I'm using it to make some enamel dots. You can do that with glossy accents. So if you don't have the Nuvo drops and you have glossy accents, you can do the same thing. So that was card number 2. For card number 3, I'm using collection 3 and sketch 4. So I used a die from my stash. I believe I actually got it from a previous kit for scrapping for less. And I wanted to cut out my leaves. So I've already cut out some of my pieces, as you can see, but I'm going to stamp my little girl here because I think she is just so adorable. This is, again, Canson XL watercolor, and I used one of my Lawn Fawn Stitch rectangle dies to cut this out, and it measures 3 3/4 by 5 inches. And I'm using my distress markers this time. So I'm just going to show this section of my coloring because, again, for time purposes, I can't show all of the coloring. I'll have some single videos where I do. So I just lay some of my color down in the shaded areas, and then I pull the color out with my aqua brush. And you can see me doing that there. But that's what she looks like. So, and I followed and was very much inspired by the cover of the stamp company. It's great when they give you those colors. It helps you color so that you can shade. I cut a piece from the purple foil paper, 2 inches by 4 1/4, and I'm just setting that down underneath her. This piece here is going to measure a 1/2 inch by 4 1/4, and I'm going to put that right across just underneath her feet. But I also wanted to ground her. I wasn't quite sure where I was going to put that piece, but I have that set there. Those ends will be trimmed. I have a smaller circle that I cut, and from the stamp set from collection 2, I took the sentiment and I cut it. No stamps were harmed in this video. It's okay. And I wanted to show the sentiment, Spring Greetings. So now I'm just playing with my die cuts. I know I'm only going to have, one tall and the other one short. I pulled in one of my distress markers just to center this sentiment. So I put some down because this is Canson XL watercolor paper again. You could also do something like that on cardstock. I used my aqua brush to move the color around, and now we're going to prop this up with some foam squares. I almost made the same mistake before I put this down. I real quick moved it, and I'm just going to pull the purple back just a little bit. It's okay. We did no damage here. I wanted to use the twine that came with the pack, and I just wanted to set that in place so that I could tie a bow to the left of it, but I wanted it wrapped around her portion of the card. I'm going to trim the ends, and you can see our bow is just going a little bit different. I'm going to trim off my edges of my yellow pattern paper just to make that even, and now I'm going to place the greens. And I'm only going to put glue at the base because then I'm going to curl those leaves. Again, dimension for me, and you can see how I did curl those. I'm going to use my tape runner, and I'm just going to put adhesive on the back of that, and I'm going to set that right down onto my 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 card base. I pulled out my dandelion yellow and apple green enamel dots, or excuse me, Nuvo drops, and I'm just placing some of those around her as well, just to tie all the colors in together. I think she is really cute. So that is card number 3. So for card number 4, of course, collection 4, and I'm going to use sketch 1. So I'm using my archival ink from Ranger in potter's clay, I believe, or no, potting soil. And I'm going to stamp this image down. Have I said I love the house mouse? Have I said it? I have a collection of these, and I love every one of them. What's great with archival ink, it does dry permanently, and it's great with watercolors. I took 2 of the pattern papers and I just cut them in half. Actually, I cut them to be 2 1/4 by 5 1/2. I used the washi tape to adhere it in the back, and then I used my Lawn Fawn Stitch rectangle die to cut out the panel, which actually measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So it's going to cover the entire front of our side folding 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 card base. I then wanted to use the washi tape just to give some interest on the line that's going across the card. So the washi tape's actually going to cover that up. We're going to set that aside, and I pulled in my Derwent Inktense pencils. This was a watercoloring card kit for me. So I pulled in my Derwent Inktense pencils. They are my favorite watercoloring pencils. I just put a little bit of color because a little bit goes a long way when it comes to the Derwent Inktense. But there are others that are just as good as well when it comes to watercolor pencils. I have multiple sets. Oh yeah. I just put my color down again to save time. I showed part of the coloring. And again, put a little bit down, move it with your aqua brush so that you can get your shading. I took another one of the pattern papers and I cut that to be 1 inch wide, and I'm going to fishtail the end, and that's actually going to be set down with some double-sided foam tape. It's not going to go the whole length of the card, and I'm going to prop up my little mouse panel and put that on my card base as well. So we've got these multiple layers of dimension going on. I pulled a sentiment from another stamp set, my favorite one, with the bloom sentiment that just says hello. And I'm going to stamp that here in the corner. And I'm going to accent that with some Nuvo drops in dark brown. And then I'm going to use my glossy accents just to go along the raindrops that are coming down. And that's that card. So for card number 5, now here this is using the banana split level. So I fell in love with this stamp set. So I pulled out my Distress Oxide and Antique Linen, and I'm going to stamp these images throughout the bottom left-hand corner, and I'm going to be using my zig markers again, and I'm just going to fill in some colors. Now, as I'm doing this watercoloring, again, I'm not going to be able to show all of this, but a good portion. The Antique Linen, you could either do this with Distress ink or the Oxide. I saw Scrappina Creations use the Antique Linen Oxide, and I fell in love with it. So she actually is a part of my inspiration for this, because I'll be honest, guys, this is the first time that I did no line watercoloring. So thank you, Scrappina. She did this really cute card, and I'm like, okay, I have to try this. So this is how this card actually came about. So lots of things going on. I pulled out the little bottle of watercolor from Avery L in Celery, and I used that, of course, for my stems, and I just put a couple drops on my acrylic block there and used my aqua brush to move it around. And now I'm going in with some other colors so that I can fill in my sunflowers. I like using the Antique Linen for no line watercoloring. I think we're going to see more of this because it fades, but it doesn't. I just really like the color at which it creates. I wish you could see it. The video just doesn't do it justice. I'm going to take a very pale blue, and I'm just going to mesh this in. And because I used a Distress Oxide, it's reacting with the water that I'm putting down. So it gives a very interesting light shade to the dandelions. Yes, that's what they're called. So that's our panel right now. I used my favorite things to cut this out once it was dry. My wonky stitch die. Yes, it made an appearance. And here's my sentiment. I'm using my VersaFine Black Onyx ink to stamp this kind of just above the flowers. I didn't want to go too far up into the corner, but right there. And I didn't want to use embossing powder or anything like that. I like the not solid look when it came to that sentiment. Instead of pulling out some watercolors, I'm just going to use my Zig markers, and I'm just going to put some color at the top, and I'm going to use my aqua brush to pull it down. Not completely. I don't want a solid color. I just want a hint. I prop this up using some fun foam onto my 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 top folding card base. And what I actually used for my sentiment is my glossy accents. Again, I didn't want to lose the texture since the sentiment was not solid. I didn't want it to be. So I kind of like that look. So I really hope you enjoyed the cards and some of the inspiration I hope I'm giving to you for this card kit. I do hope you will check out the links. Of course, I will have the link so that you can get this kit. You definitely want to get this kit and subscribed. It's a lot of fun to work with. I will also have a link to their shop. They have wonderful embellishments and other products for any paper crafting need. Oh, everything you could imagine. And also to their blog so that you can stay up to date with all of the wonderful images that the design team members do create for Scrapping for Less. If you should have any questions, please leave those down below in the comments, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. I try to be as quick as possible, but I will definitely get back to you. So please make sure you check out those links below. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so. We have a good time here. We have some great conversations. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up. And always remember, everyone, be creative.